I would not like to thank my dog for barking in the background, nor my internet service provider. That was quite bad, the Zoom. But on a brighter note, let's welcome back to the stage Kenneth Branagh and Paul Thomas Anderson. You guys are certainly familiar with director's chairs, but these are quite nice, I think, don't you?
Very hairy, aren't they?
These are your. First of all, thank you again for being here to do this. This is a treat to get to pick both of your brains together now. Both of your films obviously deal with a place and a time in which you grew up. And I want to ask you what it was like, maybe just compare notes a bit to, emotionally to go back there in a film. Paul, lead us off. Or Ken?
It was necessary, is what it was in my case. I just felt it was necessary. I just felt like I was running away from something. I didn't really, I wanted to, I felt as though when I left Belfast, it's interesting, I don't know if this happened to you, whether you had, Jane was alluding there to an introspective moment because of illness. I think that I became a reader when I left Belfast. From that big communal scenario, we were a small nuclear family, and then I got bullied at school, and I basically stayed in. So by the time I got to 15, my parents would say to me, why do you never bring any friends around? Have you got any friends? Well, I did, but I kept it very arm's length, and I'd come in and I'd go to my room and I would read. And that was, so I reckon that really, I don't know if you had a moment like that where a sort of real sense of a creativity of a particular kind forming. But to answer your question, yeah, it was necessary, and it was illuminating, sort of humbling, and I felt as though it was going back to sort of shake hands with myself, but on the way, many other people's stories reminded me, which was the reason I was doing this, and the reason and the meaning of that quiet time in my early adolescence was that I understood that meaning of the phrase, we read to know that we are not alone, and that's kind of why I made the film as well.
Yeah, I went to it with such joy to go back to this time, and maybe because I have 4 children, you see what they're going through, and you can't help but sort of compare or try to in an effort to relate to them. It gets you asking a lot of questions about where you were at that time, because all you're trying to do is be there and empathize with those feelings that they're going through. So it leads you back, whether you want to or not, to that time. But and that is a time, probably more than anything, was a time without all the technology that we have now. And oddly, it just became more cinematic to have mystery, a certain mystery that we don't have anymore, or certainly that our kids don't have anymore. That was on my mind.
Logistically, going back to these periods, what was the hardest thing to kind of hide or get rid of for you? Paul, lead us off.
Luckily the place where I live and the place where we shot hasn't changed that much, which is great. The odd street sign here and there. Crosswalks aren't as sexy as they used to be. They're a lot more complicated. They used to just be like, you'd be lucky to get across the street. Now there's a lot more warnings that there's a crosswalk. Simple things like that. But luckily, I live in a place that is for better or for worse, has kind of remained more or less the same.
Yeah. Ken, I know the street itself was not somewhere where you were going to be able to do this, right?
No, the half of the street the street's still there, but the half we're in was torn down. But we did go back and we got city bikes and we went on a scout. So we did our scouts, quite a small, I'd call it a sort of village city, but we went to all the real places. But COVID, I wanted to find an equivalent street in North Belfast and shoot there, but COVID meant that some of what we'd have to do, which was the practical stuff, was taking down satellite dishes and things like that, but then we were actually going to necessarily have to move some families for a short time, right. And COVID did not permit this. This was it was a government legislation that said it couldn't happen. So we ended up building our street on the end of an airport runway. The airport there weren't many planes flying, so we could record dialogue, bizarrely enough, and then we could more specifically tailor the way we provided, the way we built the set to deal with the idea of shooting it a lot from the physical height of the 9-year-old boy. So, and in a way, you always or at least I always rationalize everything. It goes the way it goes. It was going to be a location shoot, and then it was a built scenario. But I found myself thinking, well, we're going through, it's 50 years ago, it's through the 9-year-old boy's mind, and it's a 9-year-old who loves movies. So let's start with the sort of magic of movies, building a street that is kind of a street from my half a century ago's head.
Yeah.
So we started to talk about this with Paul when he was on stage earlier, that, the leads of his film and your film are people who have not, they're first of all quite young, really young for Jude Hill, was how old when he played Buddy?
He just turned 10, yeah.
Just turned 10. Had never been in a movie before.
No.
Just like, I believe, Cooper and Alana.
Yeah.
What are we started to get into this with Paul, but the greatest challenges and rewards of having somebody who has no experience?
You know what I'm remembering right now? I'm remembering John Riley is a great friend of mine, and he was making a movie called The River Wild, and Meryl Streep was in it, and Kevin Bacon, but Joseph Mazzello was in it. And he said it was unbearable how good he was because there was nowhere to hide. It was like, when you're working with Meryl Streep, it's Meryl Streep, but you're fighting hand-to-hand combat and you're excited by it. But here was this 10-year-old Joe Mazzello, who's also in Jurassic Park. He said it was just like there was nowhere to hide. It was the most incredible experience acting across from him because of his truthfulness and his openness. I just flashed on that when you were saying that.
I know you were saying you really found that with Alana, that some of the things that even just, good luck finding very many actresses who are willing to go without makeup and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. But I'm sure any young actor like Kieran Hines has that soulfulness. I want to work with Kieran too, but you can imagine, everyone's always reacting. You're reacting to what's in front of you, and everyone gets excited by the kind of energy that's happening. So the energy is always going to be led by that 10-year-old, because they're the freshest from the source. Everyone's probably more desperate to sort of, be connected to them.
Well, and Ken, in the case of Jude, there was a brief period where you had to go over some basic ground rules of making movies, right?
Well, he did. He kept looking at the camera for the first couple of days. It'd be a sneaky one, always be a sneaky Pete look, but he would do it just at the end. He'd just flick his eyes. And I said, well, you can't do that. It was just at the end. It was just at the end. I said, no, but that might have been like the best bit. So you can't do that. But it was mainly, I thought that it would be a smart thing to start for a day or two with mainly things with just him. But in fact, he really needed what you're talking about. He needed the interaction. And you're absolutely right that the Kieran, who is wonderful in your wonderful film, but said that Jude stops what we call the schmacting. So there's acting, and then you very quickly you can get the schmacting if you're not careful. Yep. But it's like another actor, late great Ian Holm. I remember working with him and trying to see what was going on, and the phrase came into my head: anything I can do, he can do less of. and he
good.
just and this kid, he's a lovely young man, Jude, was had that, and it was clearly, at least to us, in your beautiful film, was there was just the capacity for those actors to listen. In that clip we saw earlier on, when he leans over, it's such a full, non-acted piece of concern. And I think these are sometimes the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Man runs through night to person he's concerned about. That's when the schmacting can kick in.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I remember getting a note from a director once, a very smart director. I was walking down a hillside doing a scene with the Rosemary Harris, and he stopped me, and he was so annoyed and disappointed in me. I just remember that look. I don't know if you do this to actors. It's a terrible thing to see in your director. He just looked, oh Christ. He said, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean? He said, I said, but I'm walking. He said, no, you're not walking, you're doing walking, and then you're doing his other thing as well. You're doing acting walking. So I didn't realize that. He said, no, of course you didn't realize. That's why it's bad. So we'll have to do it again.
But that's good directing.
It is good directing.
Yeah.
It is good directing. And it didn't take much longer than that. And it was like, I tried not to act.
Well, so you both were dealing with something that I believe this was the first film where you were dealing with this, and hopefully there won't be many more under these circumstances, but obviously in the middle of a pandemic, how it's going to affect certain things. You started to talk about that a moment ago, Ken, and I just wonder, what did you find to be the most tricky part of doing that? And we could start with you, Paul. I mean, obviously it's not ideal.
No, but the land of unintended consequences was that there was such a, we shouldn't have been doing it. We had to do it, and that's what made it wonderful. So you felt like you were making a movie in a lifeboat, and it gave us all something to do when we desperately needed it, and we needed each other. And then there were moments when you looked around and you thought, wait, why the fuck are we doing this in the middle of a pandemic? Is this worth dying for? Maybe it is. I guess it is. Let's just keep going. But nobody go out on the weekend. Just don't go out on the weekend.
I guess the sweatiest moment every day, I don't know if you did this, but we tested everybody every day. And it was just that the next morning when all the results came in, and you were just hoping that nobody got ill, and if they got ill, they weren't, and that because it felt like the dominoes would just go, just tumbling down, and then then it was a sort of a ritual. I mean, a side effect that I thought was helpful, and like you, we felt very, very lucky. It felt very precious. It felt very quiet. It felt there was a sort of relish for what we were doing, sense of the privilege of what we were doing, and then really just a literal quiet at the center of things that sometimes the usual well-intended chaos can remove.
Yeah, completely.
Mm-hmm. You both, your films were both premiered, both unveiled exclusively theatrically at a time when that's becoming increasingly rare. And in fact, Paul, yours was in 70 millimeter, I know, at the Village, where I and a lot of other people, that was the place you could see it for several weeks. And Ken, I think with Death on the Nile, that's been an option for people as well, your other recent film. And I guess I just wonder, why is it still, and I'm asking this to tee it up for you guys, why is the theatrical experience so important still and worth fighting for? And what is your outlook for its future? Paul?
I mean, well, it's better than your fucking phone, So, like movies now more than ever, now than like in the player. By the way, I'm always drafting off Sir Kenneth here as well, because he was doing 70 millimeter long before Chris Nolan and I discovered it. So, it was, you know, that thrill. It's the thrill of, I guess, why we're all sitting here right now. You know, it's the thrill that's unbeatable. We all know that. It's worth preserving. Oh shit, I don't know what to add to it other than we all know. I mean, you'd only come here tonight. If you knew, you know. If you know, you know.
Well,
It's the best.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I go. I mean, we go to the pictures all the time. So it's a similar. I love it. I love it for the, you know, surprising reactions. People laugh when you don't. You wonder what that is, or you have your own 5-act drama about the guy who's munching his popcorn like at a level that you think isn't possible for the human ear, you know. And meantime, I'm nudging Lindsay, my missus, about don't, not so loud, not in a quiet bit, you know. So you're all of that is fun, and you don't do it here. But I like ice cream, and I eat ice cream at the movies. And this is so for me that in the dark, trailers playing, bloody marvelous.
Yeah.
It's just great. And then you see this on 70mm. It's like I have really been taken out of myself. Yeah. I really have. It becomes meditative. The brain disengages with all the other things that you might be beating yourself up about or that aren't helpful. So for me, it's as wonderful as it was when I was sitting back in a cinema in Belfast 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last two things from me, and then we'll free you guys. This is obviously not your first rodeo at this time of year, going through, you know, being nominated and being part of this season. I wonder if we gave you truth serum, what is the best and the worst part of all of this? Paul?
Oh, man. Well, the best part is probably all the gift bags and stuff like that you get. A lot of good soaps and hand sanitizers and shit like that, you know. Candles. And the worst part is just how short it is. You know, I wish it would just go on forever.
I know it's your favorite thing.
It sure beats an editing room, you know. It beats making. No, it's actually, that's all like, you know, fashionable to complain about it. But come on, it's fucking great, you know.
Okay.
Well, the best thing is definitely, I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, this is a master filmmaker. I've not met him before. It's a great, great thrill to be in his company, hear him talking, you know, this is, well, you were saying, I could see the light in your eyes when you're having just heard Spielberg. I felt the same way, hearing Jane Campion, hearing yourself talk. That's a big thrill to just also, you're hearing other people who are dealing with some of the things you're dealing with. You get very inspired. It's very, very nice. And yeah, there's no worst part because it's a miracle that any film gets made anywhere, anytime, at any level, at any price. If you then have the miracle that is anybody's bothered to go and see it, which this season helps ensure, you know, we bite your arm off for sure.
Well said.
Last thing I'm going to ask, since you are both certified movie lovers and viewers yourselves, seeing a lot of stuff, including other films this season, can you recommend to viewers one other great film that's been out this in the last year that they might not have bothered to check out yet, but that you really get behind? Paul?
I would like to bring everyone's attention to the most fantastic film from Norway called The Worst Person in the World. Yeah, The Worst Person in the World, which is like a miracle that we should all kind of cherish that it exists. It's a fantastic film with incredible performance at the center of it. That's one that I would
Great one.
suggest.
Thank you.
I would say this has been, at least in my humble opinion, it's been a great year for films, and I have not seen a bad film, and I've seen the ones we're all lucky enough to be in the company of, in the conversation that's going on, are all, really fantastic. We like going to see horror films. If you haven't seen it, I mean this sincerely, Candyman 2 is really excellent. Very well put together. So hard to do. People think, it's a horror film, it's easy, keep it all tense for a while, scare them about 70 minutes in and, have a monster. It's really well done, beautifully acted, very suspenseful, really good. Hard to do that with a sequel. All sorts of things that make it shouldn't be as good as it is terrific. So for what it's worth, I really enjoyed that movie.
Well, thank you both so much for this, and it is now my treat to turn this over to the Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, Roger Durling.
Well, hello everybody. I cannot help to think about Agatha Christie's and Then There Were None, some sort of cinematic version. The fact that we're supposed to have 5 directors and now we only have 2. Don't get any ideas, Ken, or maybe it might make a fun movie. But thank you, Scott. You're tremendous. Thank you for doing this. And also, I had done remarks for Jane and Risky and Spielberg, but they're not here, so I'm not going to bore you all with my remarks. I'm going to focus on the 2 gents that remain in the room. Ken, Sir Ken, you're an extraordinary director. I've admired and known your work on stage for a very long time, and you've directed before, Henry V, and got nominated for Best Director and Best Actor, and your stage productions that I have seen have always blown me away, and I feel that no contemporary actor or director understands Shakespeare the way that Kenneth Branagh does, and yet he threw me a curveball, the way he's done this most loving, sweet memory film about a family torn apart by war is a sign of a lasting film that when I first saw it at Telluride, I thought it was an allegory about COVID and how life can be quickly be interrupted by tragedy. And then 2 weeks ago, when Putin destroyed the peace in Ukraine, I couldn't help to think of your work and how a personal work of love resonates. Sir Ken, you open your heart with this film, and thank you so much for what you've done. Paul Thomas Anderson, might you be America's greatest filmmaker? I would argue that yes, you are. Since I saw Hard 8, your first film, you've been the real thing, a master filmmaker, such a craftsman, so freaking knowledgeable about film, from, understanding Robert Altman and Polanski. You know how to put a film together and push the boundaries of what film can ultimately be. But what I adore about Licorice Pizza is that all the cinematic flair and razzle-dazzle is there, but your heart is beating loud in this film. The romantic in you has bubbled up to the surface, and oh joy, we're all the better for it. And is there any doubt in my mind that the best is yet to come for the 2 of you? fuck yeah. The best is yet to come for the two of you, and we're the best for it. So it is my honor to give you the Outstanding Directors of the Year to the two of you, and